Hello, and welcome to In the DeNovo. I'm Will Grace, founder and managing director here at DeNovo Treasury, where we empower leaders of community financial institutions entering commercial and industrial banking with expertise for their strategic investment in treasury management products and services. We prioritize the how over the what. We believe in a collaborative journey and go beyond traditional services by actively transferring treasury management expertise to our clients. Thank you for joining us and staying in the know within the DeNovo.
Welcome back to another episode of In the DeNovo. I'm your co-host, Sarah Lennox, joined by our founder, Will Grace. We have another exciting segment on the world of instant payments and emerging instant payments technologies. Today, I'm thrilled to introduce our guest, Caroline Cypriano, the co-founder and COO of JJ4Tech. Caroline, thank you so much for being here and chatting with us today. Could you tell us a little bit about your background in JJ4Tech?
Sure, my pleasure. Well, thank you both for having me today. It's a great pleasure to talk about these topics. I definitely love them, so it's going to be great to go through them today. So a little bit on my background. Of course, you already told everyone about my role now at JJ4Tech, but I come from the financial market. So I have built in the past trade repository to register card receivables, so basically to enable the offering by merchants of card receivables as collateral to access credit cheaper. And I did that inside of an acquiring group that is NASDAQ listed under the ticker SDNE. That's where I spent most of my life during my career. But I've also been a director at a company that worked with extreme sports. So we offered hardware to track your metrics while practicing extreme sports, like racing your motorcycle on the track. And I also worked as a director at a gamified platform that gave you rewards every time you were more sustainable in terms of transportation. So I definitely have a long background on the technology and payments industry. And now I'm happy to be leveraging payments at JJ4Tech.
I'm glad you explained extreme sport because I was going to ask that next. What exactly qualifies as an extreme sport? Okay, that is a very interesting background. So now you're with JJ4Tech, and for the audience who might not be familiar, this company started in Brazil, correct? And now you're working on the operations for the US side?
Perfect. So JJ4Tech is actually a spin-off of a Brazilian company. So JJ4Tech is an American company incorporated in Florida. But what we offer is we offer QR code technology for payments, liquidity management platform, and we also enable FedNow as a rail for small and medium-sized financial institutions in the United States. But as Sarah said, we are a spin-off of a company in Brazil called JD that has been out there in Brazil for about 23 years now. It's the market leader to provide technology for Pix. And I bet Sarah will make me explain what Pix is. So I'll wait for that question. So I'll get into Pix. But
yeah, please go for it. That's Pix as in PIX? Does that stand for anything or short for anything?
Perfect. No, that's actually a brand that was created by the Brazilian central bank, and it's actually the short for Pixel. So their idea of creating the brand Pix for the Brazilian National Instant Payment Service was because of that. What it is a software that was launched. It was developed and launched by the Brazilian central bank, the same way that FedNow was, right? But the difference is that Pix was actually mandated over the financial institutions, but it's really important to explain that Pix was mandated to be implemented by the financial institutions, but it was not mandated to be used. So the moment that it was launched by the financial institutions, it really catched and people started using it a lot. And in Brazil, JD, right, our sister company, is the market leader to provide the PIX technology to financial institutions. So we hold 54% of all direct participants of PIX. We process more than 1 billion transactions a month. So it's really a month, like the volume is quite large. And it is important also, like since we started talking about PIX, just to give a little bit of context, like PIX was launched in November 2020. And it became the fastest growing instant payment service in the world and the second largest in number of transactions, only after India's UPI. For you to have an idea of the volume that flows through PIX, in 2024, it was $4.3 trillion in transactions through PIX. So it's an actually like huge number. Like in 2022, money transfers accounted to 63.5 billion money transfers. So PIX is huge. All that to say that PIX is a really big deal in Brazil, and considering the size of Brazil, it becomes a big deal in the world. So we definitely had a large experience with that. And why I keep on talking about PIX, because funny enough, PIX was launched before, right, FedNow, and it uses the same standard as FedNow, so ISO 20022. So our inspiration to start JJ4Tech and launch it in the United States was FedNow. So basically because of the similarities that PIX has to FedNow. So even though it's different, there's a lot to learn from them.
Gotcha. Okay, so PIX and instant payments are, I guess, with all that data, it sounds like it's extremely commonplace to use instant payments in Brazil. Am I getting that right?
Yes, you are.
Okay, so that's interesting because it seems like I know I'm newer to the industry, but just as a consumer, I'm learning more and more through DeNovo Treasury about instant payments. So it's not something that, again, like in my professional life, but just as a consumer, I hear a lot of people talking about yet. So what lessons could the US learn from Brazil's experience in moving toward this more commonplace adoption of instant payments technology?
Perfect. And just like going back to your question on, so this really means that lots of people use instant payments in Brazil. I'm just going to give you some more data on that for you to have an idea of how big it is and how used it is. So it was launched in November 2020, right, as I mentioned. So in January 2020, 0% of the population used it, right, because it wasn't launched yet. But then if you look at the end of 2024, then 76.4% of the population used PIX as a payment method. And Brazil is not a tiny country. So with a population of more than like 200 million people in 2024, that means that about like 160 million Brazilians adopted PIX in just 4 years. So PIX ended up like surpassing all the other payment methods combined. So if you combine like debit cards, credit cards, wires, and I'm not even going to say checks because checks had been like dead far long. PIX was born in Brazil. And before people start thinking that checks were killed in Brazil because of a mandate, that's not true. So what happened in Brazil is that there was a high rate of frauds regarding checks. So merchants started putting up signs saying, I won't accept your check. So because of the low acceptance from merchants, people just stopped using it. And that's how it died. But going back to your question on lessons learned, right? Like what can we apply from what Brazil learned through instant payments to the US? So I'm going to bring a few lessons, like kind of like really straight to the point, but that were really helpful in Brazil. I'd say first, like things that made payments a lot easier and more efficient. The first thing for sure was the establishment of a directory. So in Brazil, PIX payments are done through aliases. So the same way that we look at Venmo when you're able to do a transfer, if you write at someone else, right? You can do the same thing with PIX. There's no at, but there is a PIX key. And so basically, you can start a PIX transaction using as a key phone number or a CPF. A CPF is as if it was the Brazilian social security number. Email, so email, phone number, CPF, or a random key. So there are 4 possibilities of keys, and that is only possible because there is a publicly held directory called DICT, and that enables any fixed transaction to be done through an alias. So that was a really interesting lesson, and there are many discussions in the U.S. industry about directories, especially about who would hold the data, right? There's a lot of reluctancy into like having one directory as the one to hold the whole info of the whole industry. And I'm part of the U.S. Faster Payments Council Directories Work Group, so that's a subject that we talk a lot about, how to bring that into the United States. And spoiler, you don't really have to have a big database with all the data of all payments. You can actually, for example, have a directory that will only redirect you to a private directory that holds the information that you need. So anyways, the point is there are different ways of you to have a directory that can enable payments through aliases. A second thing that I'd say that made payments a lot easier and more efficient are QR codes. So the US already uses QR codes, for example, for card payments, right? Like sometimes you park your car and you scan a QR code to pay for parking using your card. But that experience can be faster. And when you pay that through your card, you got to go to that, actually redirects you to a website that got to register your card. So imagine you could do that paying instantly through FedNow or RTP. Like RTP, right, is the instant payment service offered by the clearinghouse. So in Brazil, as of mid 2024, approximately 42% of Pix transactions in Brazil were initiated by scanning a QR code. So that translates to about 2.2 billion QR code based transactions per month. So in Brazil, QR codes are really relevant, and it could definitely be transported to the US. I'm the vice chair of the QR code work group with the US Faster Payments Council. So we have been working a lot also into showing more of this technology. There's a lot of worries about, as we always find, right, as a new technology about like fraud. But funny enough, the US accounts for like the highest rate of frauds in the world when it comes to checks, and people still use it. Like in 2022, if I'm not mistaken, 54% of the US population still issued a check. And funny enough, people are worried about QR codes, so it is a matter of changing behavior, right? Like changing behavior always hurts and brings a lot of worries around it, right? So it is, we are a big advocate of this technology. Another lesson that we learned from Pix, really important one actually. Don't use PII as alias. So I just mentioned the keys. You could have, I think that aliases make your life a lot better, but you could totally use Ponytail 321 as your alias instead of your CPF, which is your social security number. So that's definitely one lesson learned. If we were to reestablish the system, I would totally recommend you don't use your PII information as your key. I know that sounds kind of obvious, but of course, like if you use PII information as your key, that increases risk of social engineering scams, right? So criminals can use your CPF, your email or your phone number to impersonate banks or family members. That's one of the highest frauds that are found over there through Pix. Common examples are WhatsApp scams. I don't know if you're all aware of what WhatsApp is, but WhatsApp is a social media, right? Like we call it social media, but it's actually an app to help with communication. So it's a messaging app. And also another common scheme is fake support calls, phishing attempts, and you can just like receive phishing to your email, right? If someone has knows that what your email is because you used your email as your key. So definitely using this information as a key makes it easier to personalize the scam. Another lesson, really important, that I get lots of questions on, oh, but come on, right? Instant payments are only for P2P, right? And we hear that, of course, because also in the US, we see the example of Venmo and Zelle. They're highly focused on P2P, but that is not true. So in Brazil, of course, P2P was a huge use case because differently from the US, Brazil did not have a strong tool for P2P payments before Pix was launched. So there was this like privately held company called PicPay that definitely did not have the penetration that Pix ended up having. So of course, P2P became a huge deal for Pix because you didn't really have any other alternative for P2P, but P2P accounts for 48% of the total transactions. But if we look to person to business use cases, that accounts for approximately 40% of the transaction. So it's not a small volume. So no, instant payments are not only for P2P transactions. And then you have other use cases that are smaller, like business to person, which is for that accounts for like approximately 9% of transactions, and business to business, that is 3%. But you got to remember that it's 9% and 3% of a huge volume of transactions. So we look at 3%, oh, that's nothing. Oh, it actually is, considering the volume that I just mentioned. But of course, like when we look to person to business, that represents 40%. So what I really want to highlight here from like lessons learned is definitely it's not only for P2P. So I think those are kind of like the major ones I'd highlight.
Gotcha. Yeah, thanks for sharing. And I was going to say, I figured it out as you kept talking, but P2P in my mind would mean consumer to consumer or person to person.
Yeah, person to person. Gotcha. Sorry, I did not. I just said it right away. Maybe I should have explained. Yeah, P2P is person to person. Then P2B, which I said that is about 40% of the transactions. That's person to business. And then 9% is business to person. And then 3% is business to business. So thank you for bringing that up.
What's interesting to me about the whole consumer versus business piece is that 100% of business owners are consumers. So if you adopt this as a consumer and you're a business owner, why would not? I mean, it just seems like it'd be such an easy transition. But then you become, as you're in a business, sometimes there's this group think about being in business and somehow you're different. But you're really not accepting a payment. By the way, hello and thank you for joining. I did not get to greet you in the beginning. This is a new arrangement with me not being the host. So
you're getting used to it, right?
Getting used to my role here. And I just noticed that I'm wearing the same logo that's on the wall here, so it kind of looks like
I love it.
Maybe I won't do that next time. So welcome and thank you for joining. And we're QR codes and directories, all good stuff. But I think maybe we could shift to maybe the human side of things. And you touched on a few things already as it relates to behavior. And even Sarah was talking about her own behavior as it started as a consumer. And I was wondering about some maybe, with the adoption in Brazil, and if there were any generational challenges. There's certainly generational challenges, I think, in the US when it comes to some adoption things. But if we think about not focusing maybe solely on technology, but maybe exploring some stories or case studies where instant payments have tangibly improved lives or businesses, and maybe if you've seen any surprising or unintended social impacts from Pix or similar systems in your experience.
Yeah, definitely. So just I'm just going to make a small comment about what you said about businesses. Yeah. What is interesting also is that pricing for businesses was different. So businesses could be charged to use Pix, while consumers they were not charged. So that's also one factor that should be considered also on like the behavior and adoption. But businesses still adopted it because of the practicality of it, even though they were charged for it. So that's also an important comment. But going back to the human side of it, like definitely I saw a lot of like unexpected, at least unexpected for me, human impact by the usage of pigs. And to be honest, I see it every day. And I'm going to give you an example of kind of like the first time that giving you like one really important real world use case that it really impacted me, right? Like one day I arrived to the airport in Rio, and I was gonna fly out, and I arrived way too early. So I did not get inside of the airport. I sat outside at a cafe. And then while I was having my cafe, I swear to God, I was like reflecting about life. And I was thinking about like my job and thinking like, why do I work with what I work? Like I've always wanted to do something that I felt had a purpose and that would really make the world a better place. That's what it was always about for me, you know, like making people's lives better, like making the world a better place. And I was like sitting there and really thinking, you know, like are payments that important? Like, does it really make people's lives better? Why am I doing what I'm doing? Am I like running away from my purpose? And then I was there, like thinking about life, and then suddenly a shoe shiner showed up, and he asked to shine my shoes, and I was wearing plastic shoes. So I just turned to him and I was like, "I'm sorry, there's nothing to shine here, right? Like I'm wearing plastic shoes." And and he just turned to me and like he said he was hungry and he asked for food. He was like, "Oh, I'm sorry to ask you that, but could you please help me out with like just buying me some food?" And I never carry cash. I'm cashless. I don't carry cash. I only carry my phone. I have all my cards on my wallet, which is a big problem in the US, to be honest. There are lots of places that I go that they don't have tap to pay, and I'm like, ooh. Or if I needed to tip someone, yeah, Venmo will help because besides that, I won't be able to tip the person. So I was there thinking to myself, and actually that happened not long after Pix was launched. Actually, Pix had been recently launched. I think I had never used Pix at that time, but I already had a key set up and all that. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna try this thing. I have no cash like in my pocket, and I want to give this guy some money. I'm just gonna try this out, and I gave him 50 reais, which I would never carry in my wallet because that would be too much money.
That's just
So
too much.
yeah, so I was like, so and then I asked him if he had Pix, and he did. And I picked him 50 reais, and he was really grateful. And he was like, "Oh my God, I'm so happy. I'm gonna buy my lunch." And then at that point, I was like, "Oh wow, shoot. Like payments actually change people's lives. I would have never been able to give this person money for food right now if I didn't have Pix." So and that is a big change also because Pix also came along with many other changes that the Brazilian central bank made. One of the changes was also like, of course, like the Brazilian central bank makes rules, but not laws. But also the Brazilian central bank was a big advocate of making some like law changes in order to change how the financial system was in the United States, sorry, in Brazil. And so also like a law in 2013 created a law number 12,865 created payment institutions. So payment institutions are fintechs. They're like they are regulated by the central bank, but they're not financial institutions, and they can open like digital accounts. So that really opened a whole world to the unbanked system and made it possible for that shoe shiner to have an account and to have Pix and to be able to receive a payment through Pix. And you see it all over Brazil. So you can donate large sums to churches using Pix. You can donate to beggars, like beggars in the street have Pix with QR codes. You can buy from street vendors, you know, so if you want to buy just like, yeah, I don't know, corn in the street, like to eat or buy or drink coconut water, you can do that like by paying it through Pix. You can buy from local commerce to like encourage local commerce. So, and you can do all that without risking carrying cash around. So I have to say, no doubt that Pix transformed people's lives. And I think that day was when it like actually clicked. And I realized, you know, how important what I was doing was, you know. So yeah, I think that's an example in real life.
That's a cool example. I was in California in November, this past November, and I had a situation where I was in my car, and uh, my wife and my daughter went into Subway. And they were buying something. Somebody approached my car and they asked for money. I don't carry cash either. I was like, I don't have any cash. And he had a name tag on, and it had his Venmo on it, a QR code for his Venmo. So I didn't have any excuse not to help them. I had to do a snap and give him $10, you know.
Right. How do you get out of it then?
How do I get out of it? You know, I was like, hey, no cash. He was like, we've got answers for that. Him and his buddies, they all had them. They were all sitting out in front of the store. We've got answers for that. So interesting story that you mentioned about the PICs. So it's starting here in the U.S. too, in a way.
Right. Yeah, I'm sure that it will pick up more and more over just like
So-
the next couple of years.
Right. What other stories or use case or examples do you have, Caroline? Any of those?
Yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, so definitely like on the other side, like going beyond social. And I think that like still on the still like kind of like wrapping up on that financial inclusion part, I think it's
Yeah.
also interesting to say that like approximately like 32% of Brazilians open their first bank account specifically to send or receive PIX payments. So that was a really big game changer. And definitely what you said about the generational thing, you asked about how that worked, right? Definitely it was also really pronounced among like young people. So aged like 18 to 24, like 50% reported like opening a bank account specifically to use PIX. So I had like specific research that was done like at the time. And also again, like talking about the more like social side of it, among like the lower income classes, like we call D and E, right? Like this figure like reaches 38%. So that really shows how PIX has helped include like traditionally underserved populations. But going beyond that, right? Going beyond the social side of it, there's also on the behavioral side, on the consumer aspect of it, the way your experience at a restaurant in Brazil is quite different than the one you have in the United States. So if you go to a restaurant and you're going to pay for your food, first, as a cultural difference, no waiter will show up at your table with the bill before you ask for it. That's quite rude. So that's funny enough. It's a big cultural difference. Another thing is, no matter what restaurant you're going to, the waiter will show up at the table with a mobile POS. So a mobile POS is, of course, you've seen a Toast machine before. So
Right,
remember,
yeah.
just imagine that every restaurant in Brazil will have a Toast machine. It won't happen, not at all. That it won't happen for the waiter to take your card and take it behind the counter to swipe it and bring it back for you to write how much you want as a tip and sign it. That doesn't happen in Brazil. So what happens in Brazil is the waiter will bring the POS machine, you'll tap your card, and you're done. There's no writing, no signing, no anything. Of course, like maybe you're gonna have to insert your card because it's a chip card, and don't try to press green because it's not gonna go to the second screen. You're gonna have to insert your key, but your password, right? Why am I talking about that if I'm talking about cards? No, because also PIX changed this experience because you can choose to pay at a restaurant paying through PIX. So what's going to happen is if you want to pay through PIX, a QR code will be generated on the screen of this mobile POS. You're going to open your mobile banking app and you're going to scan the QR code through your mobile banking app and you're going to pay through PIX. So this also changed the whole like payment experience at the point of sale. And you can do that at restaurants. You can do that or like pay for services. You can pay at the supermarket like that. So that definitely like changed. Those are other use cases of like how people started like dealing with payments in a different way.
Yeah, I know that I've definitely seen the mobile POS systems at some restaurants, definitely not all. It's not something that is just, I keep coming back to the word commonplace, the way that you've described paying for things in Brazil, no matter where you're at. But I know that I have seen them, at least within the last year, maybe the last 2 years. They're starting to have more of a
Yes,
presence here in the
it has
US.
been growing in the US for sure, definitely.
I can remember getting my first chip card, and even though I'm technically part of that younger population of folks that are quicker to adopt newer technologies and are less neophobic when it comes to new systems being rolled out and new apps to try, like Venmo. I use Venmo all the time, but I remember struggling at the grocery store with my chip card and the little cashier POS system like beeping at you if your chip didn't work in the card, and then you'd have to take it out and swipe. And I just remember there being such a weird learning curve for chip cards for whatever reason. But thank you for sharing that. That was a really interesting food for thought. Will, how about
Uh,
you?
Yeah, I was gonna shift gears a little bit if we can, and
Sure.
it's little known probably to our audience at this point that JJ4Tech and DeNovo Treasury have a partnership that we're yet to announce. So let us announce it right here. And one of the things that is very attractive about the partnership together is the work that JJ4Tech does in data analytics and things that you're doing for community FIs. And when we take a look at the modernization that you offer for treasury management offerings and how you leverage real-time data analytics and how you do that with your liquidity dashboard, I thought we could talk about how you help community financial institutions make better decisions around cash flow, liquidity risk, and customer service, and maybe talk about how there's practical ways that smaller institutions can use those tools to compete more effectively, and how they use that tool to, basically manage that liquidity risk across all their payment channels.
Perfect. Well, I definitely like talking about this because I know it's a big problem for financial institutions, especially the small financial institutions, the community FIs. So, and there, I separate into like different boxes, I'd say, right? Like the cash flow and liquidity risk and the customer service side. What we offer is basically complete solution as a dashboard to cover these two aspects, right? Like, so I'd start off with with the customer service side, because it is really important for your operator in your financial institution to have a clear view of the transactions to be able to help your client at the end, right? Like, so let's say this person, like your client, tried to do a FedNow transaction, but there was an error like on the app, and he doesn't know if the transaction was processed or not, or what happened to that transaction. So this person will call your bank. And if your operator doesn't have a clear view of that transaction, you won't be able to help. And I'm pretty sure your client will be really mad and will maybe turn to another institution. And that is, of course, considering that you are an FI that have adopted instant payments, and we know that you're going to be smart to do that, considering that it can be a great differential compared to other FIs that haven't done it yet, especially with everything that we talked about, how this changes the consumer experience, right, when it comes to payments. But what the dashboard also offers is really like the detailed transaction. So when this person calls your bank and the operator goes into our dashboard, the operator will see exactly that transaction, the details of that transaction, what happened to it, right? And we'll be able to give a quick response to your client that will be happy first to use instant payments, second to have a really quick response of what happened to that money, right? So that's kind of like the first part on the side of customer service. And then going into more of like the cash flow and liquidity risk. Um, of course, like connecting customer service. The moment you have a clear view on the funds that you have available and you can manage faster your liquidity, you can also increase your product offering or your service offering, right, to your client. So if you have more like better management of your cash flow, you can even like offer more credit to that same client that I was talking about a while earlier about that instant payment transaction. And going beyond that, beyond the product offering, going to actually like the insider part of your bank of how can you actually like manage that? What do you need? Like, what is the actual like toolkit that we're talking about? So, um, having a dashboard that you can see the balance of your master account and have alerts that you have set, that is the moment that would trigger you to do a liquidity management transaction. So eventually like, get a loan from another bank and be more like funded. That can definitely give you a lot of uh, uh, fresh air, right? Like for your treasury managers. And as Will just said, that is really important through actual data. So we also offer reports, and we are about also, no spoiler, but we are also about to add some artificial intelligence to our report generation. So the more easy to consume data, because we're not like the way, like sometimes when we talk about technology, you know, like the operators at the bank are just like, this is just too complex, right? We don't need a lot of stuff that we don't really understand. So the way we build our dashboard is from people to people, right? It's like being the easier, like being the easiest way for your treasurer to manage, for your strategist to extract reports, for your operator to see the transactions. So that's what the platform is about, right? Making the lives of the people inside of the bank easier, because in the end of the day, we're not talking about the bank, we're talking about people. And we want to make sure that the banks are going to focus on what they actually have to focus on, right? Like offering, like being in front of the clients, offering credit, you know, like being like assisting the clients with mortgages or financing their cars. So you focus on the clients, right, while we help you with the technology to make them more efficient. So in like in many different layers, there is definitely a way for you to manage easier cash flow and liquidity risk, and also making sure you're going to still be like floating your money, right, and making money through the transaction. So definitely another differential that we offer is a easy way to start a FedNow liquidity management transfer through the portal. So that's definitely where like we really resonated with DeNovo. That's just reiterating what Will just said. We are a lot of like making the life of people at banks easier when it comes to treasury. So we definitely connected on that. So I think there's a lot of good stuff to come with this partnership, right?
So very underserved segment and an underserved need. So it should be a really great synergy between the two companies. We're really looking forward to it. Sarah, did you have something that you wanted to ask Caroline?
Yeah, Caroline, we're just really excited that you were able to come on the show today and, of course, announce the partnership. I absolutely love the way that you artfully made the connection between the emerging technology, artificial intelligence, and the human aspect of things. So that was really cool. And I believe that will really resonate with our audience, especially at our community financial institutions. But before we close out, was there anything else about your offering or JJ4Tech's offering that you wanted to share with our audience?
I think it's just, I think I talked about it a little bit when we started off, but it's important to highlight that we are basically a one-stop shop to make payments and payment management easier, right? So we're not currently a payments hub. To make it really clear, we offer FedNow as a rail, and we also offer a FedLine connection. But besides that, we also offer QR codes to initiate payments. So I think that the US is at the infancy, right, of implementing QR codes. So we are definitely excited to help on that as it grows. But we know that on the other side, besides like offering FedNow, which has been growing a lot, like impressively, FedNow has already more than 1,300 participants. So that is quite impressive. So even though it's just like it's a new offering, it's starting off, we don't only focus on FedNow, we also offer QR codes, but we know that liquidity management is a problem that has been out there for a long time within financial institutions, and our platform goes a lot beyond instant payments. So it is an agnostic platform, so we encompass other rails into it. So I just highlight that kind of like what we are, right? And what are the different product offerings that we have. But that's pretty much what I would add.
I love it. So final question for you, unless you had anything else then, Will, but what would you say your boldest prediction for the payments industry on the US side of things would be for the next 5 years?
So that's a tricky one. So I have to say that I know that small and medium-sized financial institutions still struggle with technology. So it's really hard to add a new solution, especially when they rely on their cores. So I'd say that for the next 5 years, I'm going to see lots of service providers leading the innovation in the industry, because they're going to be the support that the financial institutions need to grow in technology. We're living a really like interesting moment in the US ecosystem, right? Like the first rail in 40 years was launched, right? Like by the Federal Reserve. So it is a big deal. So we're about to see a lot of transformation in the payments industry in the US. Of course, it takes time for implementation, right? And as I mentioned, I know that the lack of internal technological like knowledge and tech team, which makes a lot of sense, right? Because you're a bank, you're not a technology company, so it makes a lot of sense. You're not like investing in having like an army of developers in house and relying on service providers. But that can actually like move faster than core systems. So I am expecting to see really like instant payments catching. Like I think 5 years is a long run. So I don't think it's going to be as fast as it was in Brazil. I think it's going to take a while, but in 5 years, I really expect to see a drastic reduction in check usage. So of course, like the recent order that mandated that it will be effective in September 30th, right? That the federal government will cease to issue paper checks for all disbursements is a big deal, right? So I think this is also one of the signs of what we're going to see in the next 5 years of having more of electronic payments and less of checks. I definitely, and I have to say that I bet on the increase in the adoption of instant payments for person to business cases, not only person to person. So, we also see like, besides, I mentioned FedNow, but it's not only about FedNow, right? Like when we look at RTP, like RTP announced in February, the first $10 million transaction with instant payments over the RTP network, right? And it had just raised its maximum from 1 million to 10 million. So that is a big deal. And also like the average daily volume of the RTP network has jumped this year, right? So from like 900 million in January to 2.8 billion in March, mid-March. So this is just the start of it. Like we're seeing the growth. And I'd say that FedNow started pushing it, right? Because RTP was long, like 6 years before, like out there. But with the rise of Fed now, that really pushed the industry faster towards instant payments. So I definitely bet on seeing that growth. And also the boom of AI usage in the payments and banking industry, especially on the anti-fraud side. So I think there was a lot of I think that crypto a while ago was a big buzzword. It's like, oh, this technology, like DLT technology, for example, is amazing, but we don't know what we're going to use it for. I don't think that's what AI is. You know, like AI has clear usage and it will be used. If the robots are going to eventually take over, I wouldn't doubt it, but it is great technology, and I definitely bet on seeing that more and more in the industry. So I have a pretty optimistic view of the next 5 years. Let's hope it happens.
I love that. I always say please and thank you when I'm talking to ChatGPT. So just in case.
I do too. But I've also read from like one of the ChatGPT's founders that has been causing huge costs to ChatGPT just because of the processing. You would never think that, right? Like that generates high costs. Yeah. But he was still saying that that's natural. So he wasn't saying stop. So you can keep on doing it. But costs are increasing.
Will, did you have any final comments or thoughts on her predictions before we close today?
I'm gonna stop saying please and thank you to my chat.
To your robot.
To my robot, yeah. I guess I don't need to be so kind. I don't need to be so, I'm just naturally trained to do that, I guess.
Right. Yeah. It's funny that so many humans do it. Yeah.
Right.
I'll find that article on the cost and I'll send it to you guys if we can. Maybe we publish it with the podcast.
That's really funny. I didn't think about that. I never really thought about it, but I do say please sometimes to
I always do it.
AI.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny. Well, let us know in the comments too if you also talk to your ChatGPT or your AI of choice using more human things like please and thank you when you give it commands. And then, of course, be sure to like, subscribe, and share this episode with a colleague. Do visit JJ4Tech on LinkedIn and check out their website. The links are in the description below. Thank you again, Caroline, for your time today. This was such a fun conversation. And as always, a big thank you to our listeners. We will see you next time on In the DeNovo.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of In the DeNovo. For more content like the video we shared today, check out our website at DeNovoTreasury.com and our YouTube channel at DeNovo Treasury. Thanks and see you next time.